Today, I want to talk about self forgiveness. Self forgiveness is, for me, one of the most vital things that I've ever been able to do for myself. In fact, I was so stuck because I couldn't forgive myself. I didn't believe that I deserved to be forgiven or that I should forgive myself. Because if I forgave myself, what that meant was all of the evil things that I thought I had done would go unpunished because a lot of them were things that people didn't know about, you know. They were things that I had done actually that went against my own personal values. I didn't realize this at the time, but because the things that I was doing were going against my personal values, I started having a deficit inside of me where I felt completely, totally ashamed and just self-loathing. I can't even describe the hell that I was in. But trust me, I was in hell inside here, and so much of it had to do with self forgiveness. I remember one time I was with a therapist and I was just sobbing over the shame that I was carrying. I was beating myself up over and over again. Just, I'm a piece of shit. I'm a horrible person. I don't deserve anything in my life. I don't deserve any good things in my life. And just going on and on and on about this. And the therapist said to me, "Can you just put down the bat for a minute?" And I thought about that and I went, "Actually, no, I can't. I can't put the bat down. It is as if it is sealed into my hand somehow. And I cannot help but to just beat myself up over and over and over again. Just self-flagellation, kind of like those priests, you see that they're like whipping their backs. But I am so grateful that I learned how to forgive myself. I want to share with you today how you can forgive yourself. I was talking with a client a while back and he was going through the shame of the things that he had done. And as he looked back in his life, he was just filled with remorse and shame and regret of the things that he had done. And a lot of it had to do with his childhood and his childhood wounds. And this particular client, he grew up in a nightmare. He grew up in a truly abusive family system and relationship. And he was saying to me, "I'm such a piece of shit." He's talking about when he's 8 years old. "I was such a piece of shit." You know, and I'm like, hold on a second. Like, the day you were born, when you came out to the world, were you a piece of shit then? And he thought about it. He's no. And it's like, how about day two? No, day three. How about month one, month two, year one, year two? What point did you become this piece of shit that you believe you are? And at what point was it your environment that influenced your self-belief that you're this piece of shit? The belief that you have about yourself is not your fault, okay? But it is your responsibility to change and fix and heal. I use the analogy of, if you're walking down the road and a car hits you and drives off and you've broken a leg as a result of it and you're laying there. Okay, your leg is broken and totally not your fault. You're innocent. You're just walking along and all of a sudden the car hit you and drove off. But if you just lay there and complain and believe that the world is supposed to come and fix you, you're just going to be laying there in a lot of pain. So even though we're not at fault, we are responsible. Just like that, I'm responsible to call an ambulance, get to the hospital, get my foot fixed, put it in a cast or brace or whatever. And then when that comes off, do the physical therapy that's necessary around that. I am responsible, even though I'm not at fault. So part of, at least the first part of forgiving yourself is recognizing, okay, I'm not at fault, but I am responsible for fixing and looking into my wounds and healing my wounds. And part of the self forgiveness process is healing those internal wounds that we've taken on as a result of our childhood, as a result of the world in general, as the result of people in our lives, be it parents or teachers or colleagues or friends or family members who have hit us with a car, so to speak, and broken a leg. And it fucking hurts. It does. There's no doubt about it that it hurts. But what hurts worse is when I lay there and I say to myself, this is my fault. I shouldn't have been standing there. And you're taking on the blame of something that somebody else did instead of recognizing, okay, this isn't my fault, but I do need to take responsibility and fix this wound. So self-forgiveness, a lot of self-forgiveness is just about fixing the wounds that are inside of you. Like, I'm responsible to heal this. So I get a coach, I get a therapist, I get some help from a men's group, from an organization that helps me see inside myself and learn to forgive myself and to heal these wounds. So forgiveness isn't letting myself off the hook as much as it is taking the responsibility to heal those parts in me that bring pain and that I feel like I am that I did, that I'm responsible for them happening, as opposed to I'm responsible for taking care of the wound, cleaning the wound, making sure it heals. You see the difference there? And again, I've struggled with this as most things I tend to talk about in my own life. I struggled with self-forgiveness for a really, really long time. Part of it was also that I just didn't understand what forgiveness was. Right. And then forgiveness, and I'm talking about this in my upcoming book that I'll talk about later. Forgiveness is the ability to release the debt that's created. All right. So forgiveness. So if somebody borrows money from you, there's a debt. They owe you something back. Right. And if they don't pay you back, you're either going to forgive that loan, you don't owe it to me anymore, or you're going to go and try to get it back in some way. And so when I'm doing this with myself, when I'm trying to, actually, I think beating yourself up is a way of trying to get justice for the things that you've done. Like I owe something, so I've got to suffer as a result of this. But true forgiveness is basically saying, hey, you don't owe anything anymore. Imagine if you took out a loan and the bank called you and said, hey, you took out this loan, we're going to forgive it. Like, how would you feel? You'd be like, that's amazing. That's wonderful. You can do the same thing with yourself. You can just say, I choose to not beat myself up anymore. I choose not to make myself miserable. Instead, I'm just going to forgive the debt. And in order to forgive the debt, I have to have a lot of grace for myself and realize, okay, these things that happened to me were not my fault, but I am responsible to heal those things. And as I work on healing those things and I learn to forgive myself so that I'm not trying to create some kind of equality or retribution in the process of self-forgiveness, and I just give myself complete and total grace. I mean, think about this. Has anybody ever asked something of you and then not repaid that debt? How do you feel? You probably feel angry and hurt and all of those kind of things. Now, what if you were to just say, I forgive that debt? Right? Then how would feel? You'd probably feel a little anxious and apprehensive about it, but eventually it was like, okay, I don't have to worry about this anymore. I can just let that go. Now, forgiveness does not mean trust. And I talked about trust yesterday, and you can go back and watch that video about trust and learning to trust yourself. So even though there's been a debt and I've forgiven it, that doesn't mean that trust has been restored. So what I have to be able to do first, though, is forgive myself so that I can learn to trust myself. And like I said in yesterday's video, when we begin to trust ourselves, then we have the power to be able to show up powerfully in the world with our love, right? So I wanted to share with you part of my story that is something that, look, I struggle with. I struggle with allowing myself to fully forgive myself. I do. And wherever those places are at that I haven't forgiven myself, those are a great indication of where the wounds are. One of the things that I really struggle with is procrastination. I hate doing certain things. And then those things become big. And then I get all shameful on myself because I didn't deal with this thing when it was small. If I would have just dealt with it when it was small, it would have been so much better. But I didn't. I didn't. Instead, I let it grow really, really big and to a point where it was almost unmanageable. And I've done this in a bunch of different spaces in my life. And every time I do it, man, I just like hate that thing about me. But the thing that I have to remember is that just because I do something doesn't make me a bad person, not a piece of shit. There's a difference between I'm a human and sometimes I fuck up, and I'm a piece of shit. I always fuck up. That's what the basis of shame is. I have to go back into those places inside of me and forgive myself for procrastinating. Hey, Chuck. Yeah, you messed up, dude. All right. Do better. Work harder. Recognize this pain that happens for you. And next time, step up. Take care of things when they're smaller. And then I fuck up again, and hopefully I learn from that. The point isn't that I will ever be a perfect person, that I will never fuck up. But the belief that I'm a fuck up, that's what I do, that's the shift of forgiveness, of self-forgiveness. I'm not a piece of shit, but sometimes I do shitty things. And when I do shitty things, I have to go back and correct those things. Because if I leave those things uncorrected, then I'm going to feel that debt inside of myself. And instead of being able to release that, I'm going to hold on to that. And I'm going to hold on to this narration that I have in my head that says, I'm a piece of shit. Look what I did. And that's what a lot of us will do because we don't believe we deserve anything good. Now, you see everybody else based on what they do, and you know yourself by what you've done and what you've done and the thoughts and the feelings and the things that you think you're capable of. Everybody else you only see for a short period of time, right? And you see their behavior, and then you make an assumption about what they're doing. So this guy over here is like, it looks like he has it all together, because I know myself, I know that that's not true, that I don't have it all together. But instead of beating myself up because I don't have it all together, instead I just realize, yeah, I'm a human, and humans, we fuck up, we fall down. And that's why we need grace. That's why we need forgiveness of ourselves and forgiveness of others. Because if I can't forgive others, guess what? I'm going to have a really, really hard time forgiving myself. And if I can't forgive myself, then I can't restore trust in myself. And if I don't forgive and trust myself, then it's going to be really, really difficult for me to love myself. And if I don't love myself, then all of my actions and behaviors and things are going to come out with negative energy. And when I perform with negative energy, then a lot of shit happens. But if I can forgive myself, I want to let go of the need to beat myself up over it, try to do better, and then restore trust in myself. Okay, I'm not a piece of shit. If I fuck up, I'm going to go back and make a correction. Yeah, and I will learn from that, and I'll try to do better next time. That gives me the freedom then to go, okay, I'm not a piece of shit. Actually, I'm really lovable. As a human being, I'm lovable, acceptable, and okay just the way that I am. So learn to forgive yourself. It will change your life. Let go of the bat. You're not a fuck up, but fucked up things happen to you that caused you pain, that caused you to act out in ways that were counter to your own values and virtues. And the good news is that anyone at any time can change that by simply deciding that you're going to follow your virtues. You're going to follow the things inside of you that you know are right to do. And then when you fuck up, because you will, I will, forgive myself, give myself grace, learn from it, and move on. So don't hold the shit against yourself. Don't hold the shame against yourself. Instead, just let that go. It's a decision. I choose to forgive myself. I choose to forgive myself so that I can start trusting myself again. I take responsibility for the pain that's happened to me. The responsibility is I will look at that, heal that, work with that, learn from it. And as I do that, then I trust myself. And as I trust myself, then I learn to love myself. And as I love myself, then I can love others. And that's the whole point of existing in this world, is to love yourself and to love others. Anyway, I hope you like this. If you did, please subscribe, make a comment, and I will see you next time.